Welcome to Simply Sarah. I'm Sarah Stockham, and I am so pleased that you are here with us for this remarkable conversation with Four Arrows. He has also not only spent time with the Lakota and learned so much that he has now been given a name, Four Arrows, but he is also someone who has spoken at the General Assembly for the United Nations. Before we get deep into our conversation, Four Arrows, we always want to say at the top our thank you to our sponsors, to Stegner Family, to Lamano Art for their amazing support, and for you being here, carving out time. You've been on the beach drumming already this morning, helping others, and that you are here in studio with us today. We welcome you.
Well, it's a pleasure to be with you, and thank you for your work in the world. It's needed.
Tell me a little bit about your story of how you grew up as Don Jacobs and PhD, author of multiple books, professor, somebody who has made such a difference in so many people's lives. And yet there was something in your heart that was calling you from where you had been, what's in your DNA as Irish and Cherokee, to work with the Lakota, and for you being given a name by then. Tell us a little bit about your journey, please.
Well, I guess I can start with the Marine Corps, U.S. Marine Corps, the Vietnam era. After I was honorably discharged, I had a chip on my shoulder about the lies relative to Vietnam and the loss, the trauma. So I took it out doing whitewater rafting and kayaking. Tried a river in Mexico that was uncharted and had not been accomplished before as a full ascent, and had a near-death experience. The Raramuri Indians of Mexico saved my life. I write about this in a book called Primal Awareness. But in any case, I saw a way of living that, and the Raramuri Cimarron people that have not had exposure to the Western worldview, and was very far deep in the barrancas of Copper Canyon. Mm-hmm. When I got back, I changed everything. I had been a sports psychologist. I went back and got my second doctorate in education with a focus on Indigenous Worldview. And so it was from that, right after graduation from BSU, I was offered the position as Dean of Education at Oglala Lakota College. And that was the beginning of my Lakota journey. One of the 7 sacred ceremonies of the Lakota is the relative making ceremony. And so I'm a honka. That was given my name, Wahinkpe Topa. So apparently my spirit was not going to go to where the Irish go or the Cherokee. It's going to go where the Lakota go. And so that's really how I got it. Of course, then after my doctoral studies, and I went and lived with a number of primal cultures that still remember the old ways, which are fewer and fewer. And of course, Pine Ridge, and the Navajo Reservation, the majority have lost these understandings, and there's pockets of people holding on to the language and the spiritual traditions. And so I found that this has got to be where we return, because for 99% of our history, all of us, our ancestors lived according to the laws of nature. And until around 9,000 years ago, we did it pretty successfully with clean water, clean air, no prisons. We've got to return to that worldview.
In the space of where you are now, I know that you do so much, that you, for people who are either in Canada or in Mexico, when you are there, that you offer opportunities to work with you. But you also have an online offering. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, owing to the politics of our times, I'm one of the professors that took on some things that universities are not wanting you to take on in terms of hegemony. I won't get specific. But as a result, I lost my position after 24 years and joined some other activists that have had that same thing happen. So I started going back to what I did before I had my turnaround, when I was a sports psychologist, except instead of doing hypnosis, I'm so sincere about believing that the natural phenomenon of hypnosis and our misunderstanding of it, and from the misunderstandings from Hollywood and three of them, which refer to, it as something of the devil.
Mm.
I think that most of our troubles are because we have these neural pathways from our early childhood, from trauma, that have us do things that are not healthy for us. And we have a trans logic uh, that guides us. And we can learn how to recognize those with a metacognitive strategy I call the cat and fawn. And then also we can use the self-hypnosis, because all hypnosis ultimately is self-hypnosis.
Mm-hmm.
And we don't have to pay someone to do it. Mostly when we pay someone, it's because we don't know how to, or what to hypnotize ourselves to do or to change.
Right.
So what's I do 4 sessions, and in each session, I teach self-hypnosis, hypnosis. I teach the cat fawn concept. Cat is the hypnosis, concentration, activated transformation.
Mm-hmm.
And starting with the worldview precepts, fear, authority, words, and nature, which is the fawn, and how we have a very different worldview in our early indigenous cultures and those who still hold on to it that
Mm-hmm.
relate to those 4 ideas of fear, authority, words, and nature. So I do that in 4 sessions, and I have people pay what it's worth. I've been doing it for 2 months now and have quite a few clients. So it's a way to keep some bread coming in for the family.
Absolutely. And it's not just the human family that you are taking care of. You also have a beautiful number of animals that call your place home, whether they be what we would consider wild or that they are ones that live with you all the time. It's just so amazing to see the photographs that you have with the different animals. I would love to have you share even more about the auto-hypnosis space, or about the hypnosis space. I think that there is a huge misconception about what it actually can do. People on the site are whispering, if you're a smoker and you want to stop smoking, try hypnosis. And that just seems to be, such a almost hands of no to what we have seen from Hollywood and from other places about, follow this clock and watch it very carefully, and then, you're going to come along and do whatever I tell you to do. That is not what hypnosis is. There's absolutely a space that the person has autonomy throughout the relaxed experience. And I'd love for you to share, just kind of break some of those bondages that people are still that misconception of with hypnosis or self-hypnosis.
That's a great question, and it's not a coincidence that you started with animals and moved into hypnosis, because I learned about hypnosis from wild horses. People go on YouTube, just put in the wild horse hypnotist, and you'll see me when I was a young man with a wild horse on a television program where they wanted me to bring in a Mustang and show my horse whispering. Because during times of stress, all creatures become what we could call hypersuggestible to the communication of a perceived trusted authority figure. Mm-hmm. And so this is a natural thing that all animals have, that allow a herd of 1,000 wildebeest turn on a moment's notice when lions are coming from 2 different ways. And so I was able to do this sort of magic with wild horses. And I couldn't do it with domestic horses until I realized when fear was involved, it worked. And of course, wild horses are afraid. And there's a lot of studies about animal hypnosis as well. So we are animals, and we're part of that. In terms of the problematics with it, I wrote a book when I was working as a medic and a firefighter many years ago in Marin County, when I had learned this, when I was working with wild horses. And I would talk to my patients and say, while I was doing standard medical care, because, legally you always have to say this has to be an adjunct to standard medical care.
Correct.
And while I was doing, CPR, I would say, the blood is flowing and this is happening, even if the person was unconscious. And we had a very high success rate.
Yes.
And so a gentleman that is very famous, his name is David Cheek, and also a guy named Norman Cousins from the UCLA School of Medicine. They saw my little video I put together for firefighters on it, and they got Prentice Hall to publish this book, which is called Patient Communication for First Responders. But they wouldn't, to your point, they wouldn't let me use the word hypnosis in it.
Right.
And so for the reasons that you stated, right, and so throughout it, I have pictures of, this was at Alta Bay Burn Center when a African-American man came in with a burn that was a deep second-degree burn that actually charcoaled his skin. And by having him imagine his arm was in a clean bow of fresh snow in just 12 days, right? So these things are in the book. Well, it was banned I was in Brisbane, Australia. I was talking to 1,500 emergency room physicians, and they came up and said, Dr. Jacobs, we can't get your book. So I called, and the publisher said, oh, it was remaindered. I didn't know that term at the time, but that means taken off the market because somebody had written, who was an MD, PhD, in the Journal of Emergency Medical Services, this should be used only by licensed medical physicians who are trained in this phenomenon and who are members of the American Association of Clinical Hypnosis. Well, I was a member of that association, but I was teaching this for first responders.
Right.
And so it was taken off the market, and it was a very sad thing for 20 years. Well, the good news is one of my doctoral students, Bram Duffy, he came upon the book and said, "This is so important. I've been a paramedic for 20 years in Houston. This has got to be redone." I said, "Take it. It's your book, right?" So using my name, he got a publisher, and it just came out. It's called Hypnotic Communication in Emergency Medical Settings, and endorsed by the top medical emergency people in the world, really. So it's back, so after a time, we finally have awakened to the importance of it, right? And, I'll give you a little example that'll sound really strange to people and unbelievable. But let's say they're driving home from work, and unfortunately, someone has an accident, maybe a Volkswagen Bug has been crashed into a tree, and a young lady is hemorrhaging, and the door is slammed so badly it can't be opened. That person, with just a little bit of training and using some of the things like confidence and rapport building that I teach, could walk up to that car and say, after having called the ambulance, "Hello, my name is so and so. The work is over. Things are being made ready for you at the hospital. I just made the telephone call. The ambulance will be here in about a half an hour because we're out in the wilderness here. And I can't open this door right now, but the fire engines will be here. However, you're hemorrhaging right now. So I want you to go ahead and stop that bleeding. So when I count to 3, just go ahead and stop it. 1, 2, 3. If you speak in a matter-of-fact way with that confidence, and it's during the first hour post-trauma before old programs come in, 90% of the time, that person will control their autonomic nervous system like a yogi could do, and will stop the bleeding. So this is really a life-saving tool. But so if it's that way when we're spontaneously in hypnosis, we can recognize at home if we have post-trauma stress disorder, if we want to stop smoking, if we want to be able to have courage to talk to the boss, if whatever the goal is that we have, are the habits that we want to change. I recently had a man, 75 years old, who had been biting his nails for 52 years. And everything, including putting this horrible tasting thing on them and stuff. And in just one session of learning how to do hypnosis and what it is, he came back with tears in his eyes the next week, because we do one session a week, and said, my fingernails are growing, And I saw him at, we play music on Tuesday nights at a place here in Mexico, and he showed up, and it was about 2 months later, and he was the first of my clients, and he said, "Look at this, and they're still growing." So we can learn this, and it's not hard to learn, but in many ways, the powers that be don't want us to know it, and that's the story.
This is a perfect place for us to take a quick break. We will be right back after we thank our sponsors.
I began this business over 20 years ago. I specialize in paintings of all kinds. I make murals, portraits, and live paintings. My specialty is color and also telling a story. Some of the work that Lamano Art does are calligraphy pieces, wedding invitations, sign work, and sculptures like fairy doors. I'm open to working with anyone on any idea. Please feel free to contact me at your convenience, and I look so forward to talking to you. Thank you.
I'm so enjoying this conversation with you, Four Arrows. Let's go a little bit deeper into hypnosis. Where would you say that the history of hypnosis, or where did it begin? If you can kind of help us a little bit on that journey as well.
Well, sure. I mean, Mesmer is probably the person that's the most well known, and they called it magnetism, and he, it was really popular in society, especially with the women, and that story is sort of the origin of it becoming popular. But I rather go back to indigeneity, our nature-based ancestors, and seeing that this was something that animals did. They went into this state for either for freezing and holding still, or for moving based on more or less telepathic communications from other animals. A lion is coming from the north and the south, and then everybody head this way. And so, because our indigenous ancestors, that's how they lived their cultures. They had the same potential for greed and avarice and fear and jealousy and violence as any human being ever has had, because that's in the origin stories. But who's teaching us how to fix that are the animals in all the stories. And so by watching nature and having these animals be our teachers and teaching us how to do everything from make a nest so that we can make tight baskets for our water, to being brave, to being generous. But we also then realize that, wait a minute, if we don't use this hypnosis, then we wind up breaking the order and doing things that are not generous, and doing things that are selfish, or getting ourselves in trouble without the skills. And so we did ceremony. And all indigenous cultures, I mean, it's like originally the Navajo, for example. I've got a number of Navajo students who tell me about 80% of the culture has lost these ways, but 20% that still do them, they have lost probably 20 or 30% of the ceremonies. They don't remember them anymore. So we did so many ceremonies, and we probably did them every day. And of course, the ones that the Kunchak, the Raramari, the Kogi, that people that I've spent time with, they do them at least once or twice a day. Well, you go into a lodge like my Anipi ceremony, what I'll be doing when this young man comes back from the island on Thursday morning. You go into this womb-like structure. It's dark, there's hot coals in there. People are drumming and singing. You go naturally into a state of hypnosis, and then you're praying. You get going into dialogue with the spiritual energies that, if we really understand spirituality, we have the spiritual energy in us and around us. And I know, I'm not going to say New Age in a bad way necessarily. It's a change, I guess, but a lot of people do see the idea of talking about spirit as sort of a New Age thing that we dismiss. But, there's places like the University of Virginia's Center for Perceptual Studies. A recent Nobel Peace Prize winner in quantum physics says that the research they do on near death and life after death, and ideas that relate to this mystery we call reincarnation, and the idea of soul and spirit, its research is as good as anything in quantum mechanics. But also the answer is it's a mystery. And all the words for what we would call God in our Western cultures and indigenous cultures are words that translate as into Lakota, Wakantaka, is great mysterious thing. Indigenous languages are verb languages, so they're really in motion all the time, hard to categorize with them. But so great mysterious thing it's not only a great mystery, but this creative energy, he, she, it, whatever it is so beautiful to have made this beauty that, and this magic and this complexity of our interconnected lives on this planet. And by really understanding that we are spirits that come from the stars, uh, that this is all indigenous cultures have said this in one way or the other, right? And that we do have a journey of continuation, as mysterious as it is. I mean, from the East, we used to always say, we don't ever come back as animals. That's just one tradition and one kind of interpretation. But a recent book about 8 years ago called Amerindian Rebirthing out of the University of British Columbia, when they did their studies of children that remembered or talked about in incarnations, we actually came back about 40% of non-humans. That kind of is shocking for people, that people can become trees or whatever. So we don't know. It's a mystery. But, if we really understand that we are spirits inhabiting this container that we've selected. And in that one book that I showed you, this one on patient communication, who wrote the foreword for this is David Cheek. He's no longer with us. But David was head of the American Association of Clinical Hypnosis. He was also an obstetrician and had given birth to like 140 people over his career. He was about 82 when he wrote an article based on having done regression therapy with hypnosis on people that he actually gave birth to. And he had notes that showed whether their head was facing left or facing right when they came out of the womb. And so he had this data. And of course, everyone believes that you cannot remember the moment you were born. And I mean, I can't, And so he said, well, let's see if hypnotic regression can do that. So he did it. And when he wrote the article, he did have a statistical significant number of people that faced the direction that his notes read. But what got him in a lot of trouble was he had two anomalies where people were saying, essentially, I'm waiting to decide whether these are going to be my parents. And when he talked about that, he got in a lot of trouble. I mean, a lot of people just, because they all thought, well, regression is a technique that we do use that maybe someone invents a person to help them with the therapeutic problem, which is how I did it when I was doing hypnotherapy, right? Now when I see it, maybe that's true, but maybe not.
So what's the difference between hypnosis and regression, the hypnotic regression?
Well, regression is just the way you use hypnosis. It's just one tool. The regression is a tool because if the hypnotherapist thinks, well, by going back to when the first time you had this problem, the first time you were afraid of getting into a bathtub, whatever, and you put that out of your mind, it can be helpful in understanding it. It's not necessary though. I was in a hot tub in Marin County with a Dr. Howard Tice, a dear friend of mine, and he was talking to me about a lady who was a professor, I think, 52, wouldn't get in a bathtub because of a near drowning when she was an infant. And she had the logic of saying, I know it doesn't make sense, that it was unlikely that could happen, but I still can't get in. Well, that's trans logic. That's how we are living our lives right now, poisoning our oceans. And so he said, yeah, I think I've got her about the time to be able to get into that water now. I said, how long have you been working with her? He said, well, going on 3 years. I said, send her over to me. I'll have her in the Samadhi tank the same day. And then from there, we'll do some hypnosis. Then I'll take her out to a lake and I'll have her swimming that night. He said, yeah, I know. That's why I don't send anybody to her. You know how much money I've made in 3 years? I was when I quit. And went and took off, right? And so I think a better question really is, what's the difference between hypnosis and meditation? Mm-hmm. And meditation really is the other side of the coin. Meditation is hypnosis without the hypnosis in this way. Meditation is what we call the state of hypnosis. Mm-hmm. We know very little about, except we know it's about believing in an image and getting the imagination happening, the visualization happening, the children have naturally. They're in hypnosis the first 5 years of life, pretty much. That's why they can learn 10 languages. And so the meditation puts you into this state of hypnosis, but it's not called hypnosis because there's no directive except I'm just let my mind be emptied and whatever comes into it, and maybe the spirits will come and teach me something. And so that's a beautiful form. If you know how to put yourself into a meditative state deeply, then you already know how to go into hypnosis. You can also take a string and paperclip. Many people have played with a pendulum. And just move it in a circle with your fingers to start with, so you can visualize and imagine what it would look like, and then do it with your imagination by believing in it. And most people can do this really quickly. It's like a Ouija board. It's ideomotor neurons in the fingertips that Jacobson in 1939 proved existed right before the action happens. But it won't happen unless you're in hypnosis. So you can save yourself $300-400 paying somebody like me right now, your audience can, by getting a string and dental floss and paperclip if you want, and getting it going in a circle. Well, why would you do that? Well, that just means that you're now in a suggestive state that if you have a predetermined directive, like whenever I reach for that cigarette, my arm will stop and I'll remember how beautiful it is to breathe in this life, something like that. If you don't have to think about it, if you think about it, the pendulum will stop, you're out of hypnosis. If the pendulum keeps going and you image that, bingo, watch what happens and then take action, do that in vivo exposure. So I think, the meditation and hypnosis are just adding with the hypnosis, you're adding a very specific directive.
So what I hear you saying is when you were creating the language and around what the person wants, I'm hearing you state it in a positive, not as in a negative. So if I'm going to reach for the third helping of whatever, rather than reaching for that, my arm pulls back in, I see myself as healthy. Using very positive language rather than I won't do that, or that is not good for me. Using the negative part of it.
You got it. I mean, if you come up to somebody in a medical emergency and say with all good intentions and do everything right and say, my friend, you're not going to die. Which of those words has the most image producing quality to it?
Yeah.
Die. Oh yeah. So that's one of the teachings, that you, I had a gentleman the other day from Iceland that came here to work with me on this 4-day, this four once a week things. And he actually did it with his wife. And with his wife, I helped her formulate the words. And we had a big thing of ice that was so ice cold. And they did pre-test by seeing how long they could hold their arm in it. It was like 14 seconds for her. And then she did the hypnosis. And at 60 seconds, I said, go ahead and take your arm out.
Yeah.
So then he did it. But I said to him, I want you to come up with your own words this time. So he did it. He also had done 14 seconds. And the second time, he only did 15 seconds. And he said, it didn't work. I said, no. What were your words? And he said, I want to be hot and extremely calm. Well, even though those words aren't necessarily negative, in the mnemonic for this, which is called credible, speak with confidence, and this is whether to yourself or others, speak with confidence, build rapport, have a certain expectation, then go to your directive. With the directive, make sure it creates an image that's relatively believable, that will be taken literally to get to your point.
Yes.
And with the right amount of enthusiasm, right? And so by saying I'm going to be hot when his arm is in ice, that's not really relatively believable. And being completely calm when this is a person that had a phobia about cold, that wouldn't work either, right? That's not exactly true. So not negative necessarily, but too far up. So both his wife and I laughed because we knew right away that was, so we reframed it, gave him different words, and then he went for 60 seconds, right? So good point you're making.
I want to move into our conversation to that space of what Gandhi had said, that quote that you shared that's just so incredibly powerful, that a requisite for spirituality is fearlessness. Language has such an important, there's just so much power in language. And I think that that's one of the things that we have lost with so much pervasive television, and we don't have to think for ourselves. We are just gifted the words to be able to share with other people, right? That space of really doing cognitive uh, gymnastics to find the right word for exactly how we feel or what we see that our world, the way that we want to be shaping our world, finding the words for that. And I think that this space of what Gandhi said about the requisite for spirituality is fearlessness. It's not about courage; it's about something beyond courage. I'd love for you to talk about that.
Sure. Well, the words this on the people can go to worldviewliteracy.org and download this for free, and it's the non-binary contrasting worldview precepts between the indigenous nature-based, spirit-based, and the dominant materialistic anthropocentric base. And by looking at these as a non-duality, for example, using the word egalitarian to describe indigenous cultures, and rigid hierarchies to describe ours. However, when the Lakota go buffalo hunting, they do have a hierarchy. So you can look at there's sort of a binary there. Well, people will say, yeah, but what about a low respect for women, which is typical in our Western culture and always has been, and a high respect for the matriarchies of our pre-contact indigenous.
Mhm.
We don't ever want to be low respect for women, they say. So how can that be a binary? Well, because the more you know about a low respect for women, the more you know about the consequences of it, the more you will have a high respect for women. So it always works that way. And so you're so right about the words, and Gandhi's words about moving into fearlessness are important because Western culture has said fearlessness is foolish, and many top people. Socrates said that, direct quote: fearlessness is foolishness." And you can understand why, because fear is a gift. The fear that comes to us for a few seconds is magical. Thank you gift. But from then we hold on to it. Whereas it's an emotion, and in the word emotion is the word motion. We've got to move. Well, we do move into courage as the first part, because it takes courage to decide, okay, I will make this decision. I'm going to talk to my boss in a clear way. I'm going to face this danger. I'm going to, and of course, most dangers now are ego. The number two biggest fear in the world, the number two biggest fear is death. Number one is public speaking, according to one major study. So now here we are. We're saying move into courage. That gives you and that's beautiful. That gives you the way to say, all right, I'm going to do this. And then you go and start walking into the boss's office. And that takes courage.
Mhm.
But if you have to hold on to that courage, that's a stress that can eventually cause you to stop being courageous or work you out. I had so many activists who have had that problem. I did 4 tours of duty at Standing Rock, and I've seen activists just pour their heart out with courage and stand in the line and get sprayed with pepper spray and hit with a baton, and had a lot of courage. But boy, they burned out. And then when they see the oil go in anyway, they burn out. But the indigenous people that were there didn't. And that's because, like, once you get to the cliff, that takes courage. The commitment to jump takes courage. Jumping, if you move into fearlessness, now you see the eagle as you're falling down. You see the salmon in the water below you. You feel the air. Your feet hit the bottom and feel the bubbles. You are trusting the universe. And that's what Gandhi was saying. This is a prerequisite, because you've got to trust your interconnectedness with all spirits. And spirituality can't happen without moving from fear to courage to fearlessness.
I really appreciate for us that you start with the word fear in that progression. That's where For me, fear is a space of lack. It's a place of untrusting. Fear is a place that feels very, very alone, even if there are other people who may be sharing that same fear. It's its own silo, and that's where we start individually, in that space of moving into courage. And I think for me in my own life, as I have looked at people that thrive, who've had very, very similar experiences that I have growing up in the Democratic Republic of Congo with a tribe and being taught these concepts, how important women are, how important it is to be in season with what's taking place. Even though we were at 4 degrees south of the equator and basically had 12 hours of darkness and 12 hours of light every single day, not these huge shifts as I have moved further north, and there are these big shifts that we have in terms of how much light and darkness that we have. But in those spaces of watching other people, who some of them have gone on to do truly remarkable things. I'm thinking of Larry Streshley, who has gone and spoken, and went and got his PhD in ag in Hawaii, and then went on to do incredible things in the Democratic Republic of Congo, including going to London and speaking at their parliament about what was taking place and thanking them for the money that they were investing into what the work that they were doing. And part of that work of teaching people in a huge crowded city that will be the largest one in the continent of Africa by the year 2050, if not before that, way before that, teaching them how to take that small parcel that they have and be able to plant and grow in that tiny parcel food, in order that they would be able to have at least be able to have some of that food, right, to be able to take care of themselves. And then watching how people, as they are doing this, is changing entire areas, entire neighborhoods of how people look at each other, how they respect each other, how they speak to each other. These transformational changes. And Inga, his wife, has done so much of that work. And so I see people who have gone on and done these kinds of things, and then not naming names, but just watching other people who are I would say, shunning that experience of what they saw, what they knew, what they experienced, and coming to a country that has electricity nearly all of the time. Lightning strikes can make some differences in that, but watching and seeing almost a mesmerizing of culture here, and struggling still to be able to bridge that can be true and this can be true, and finding a way inside themselves to allow those spaces to be at ease with each other.
Well, that's such an important story. If people go to our website, provensustainable.org, you'll see an educational system of about 30 places, and many of them are African maroon people and other indigenous cultures that have lost it, that had really gone down, where the water was polluted, the land could not be tilled, people were alcoholics, whatever. And these are all those kinds of situations where people did what your friends are doing and what you are doing, and then proven sustainable. In other words, now like the Misak, right? And they had this, the sheep weren't growing, the crops weren't growing. There were lots of alcoholism. People had lost the language, etc. And then almost always women that lead these things in some way. But so now it's just the opposite. Hardly any alcoholism. Everyone speaks the language. That happened in 2 generations. So our website shows that can happen. And the challenges that they describe in the educational videos that people can listen to will really answer your question or that you presented for people. And that they'll show that the challenges of colonization, because we're all settler colonizers and say really in many ways, none of us have grown up in ways that are avoid, in the last couple hundred years have avoided colonization. And that is hypnosis. And so the contradictions, even though our hearts are good and our minds are good, we tend to not get it, and challenge it and not understand it. And that's what we've got to change with the worldview. The worldview was a word I didn't like to use. Immanuel Kant, first used it as a definition of an intuition of the world. But what happened after that was a worldview was religions fighting religions, religions fighting science, science fighting against itself, and it never created a dialogue. And then in about the 1939, 1940, Robert Redfield out of the University of Chicago, kind of the father of social anthropology, he brought it back and essentially said there's only two worldviews. There's not a million of them like most people still think. And one of them, because when he heard people talk about it, there was always one that was human-centered as opposed to animalistic, one materialistic versus spiritual, one, high regard for the feminine, etc. And he said, there's really only two basic worldviews and all the great diversity of cultures. I mean, the indigenous cultures are so diverse in their stories and their ways of understanding because they're based on the location. The language comes from that unique place, and the traditions do, right? And that unique place happens, right? But the in common things that I could tell you so many stories about these great differences, and then to find the in common. Well, one brief story. I was with the Kogi, and we had built a Temescal, a Lakota lodge for us, a purification lodge. When they saw me put the rocks in the fire, they started talking. The Mamos started to talk with each other. My translator said, they're not going to be able to join you actually now. They have to go all the way back up the mountain and get together with the community and talk about this and see if the community agrees with them. And I said, why is that? What happened? What changed? Well, if a rock is on a trail and they're coming down, a little Kogi boy goes up to it and touches it, the mom or dad would say in their language, please leave it there, honey, because it's on a journey. It's just moving slow. So their respect for the rocks. And here they see me putting it in a fire, right? So I laughed, and I went, oh, this is fantastic. And so my translator explained the Inya, which are our rock people, and the sacredness of what they teach us when they get heated, and and on and on and on. And then they started laughing, and of course they all went in, right? So there's differences, but these common ideas that are so crucial to putting this all together, and it's not easy. It's not easy because the hegemony of our education, our media, folklore, continues to teach us the language of conquest.
I would love for you to speak about the Temescal, about the space of purification. The Lakota will have a different name for it. The Temescal is what I have been introduced to in Coba, in Mexico. Tell us a little bit about what is that? Because you're right, you have the grandparents, the grandfather, the grandmother rocks that are heated up outside that come in, but there is this special space that's created that you spoke as a womb. Can you tell us a little bit about that, and perhaps some of your own experiences or experiences that you've seen other people have in this space of not just purifying the body, because when you're in temperature like that with that much humidity, the body just naturally begins to let go of toxins, but of what's taking place then also on the spiritual realm, on the social space as well.
Beautifully said. That you do get that, both you get that therapeutic purification from the heat, and then with the praying. I tell people, you're going to be in an hour and a half, you're going to physically be a completely different person. It takes usually about 9 months to lose your cells. You're going to lose them all. So when you leave here, you are what the Lakota Lodge is called is INIPI, INIPI, and that is that place you go to be born again.
Mhm.
And so you will physically. I said, but your brain doesn't sweat. So that's where the getting into dialogue with the spiritual energies. You know, the Lakota believe we have 405 spirits around us, and they can name all of them. I can't, but the spiritual energies, and then you're gonna, if you pray in the lodge, you know, meaning going into dialogue with the energies, and once in a while mention the great creator,
Nice.
then you know you'll come out completely changed, because then your brain cells will actually be changed. Uh, Now, here I use a Temescal architecture
Mhm.
to honor the Nahuatl people and the Aztec and the Maya people. That's what they use here in Mexico.
Right.
But for many years, I would make mine out of the 14 willow branches. And of course, in the old days, they used buffalo skins, and we use tarps. But um, uh, so I do I'm authorized by the Great Lakota Nation to, to pour the water, and but I do in a Lakota ceremony in a Mayan architect.
Yeah.
But so yeah, I mean the young man that came from Spain who had done his first ombleche with me, which is translated as crying through the night. Crying for indigenous people isn't necessarily a negative thing, and that's kind of it's hard to translate what they mean by that. But crying through the night is about what is my purpose? What can I do in the world that all the accoutrements and civilization have blocked me from getting? How can I go out in a remote place by myself without food or water in the elements with just a sleeping bag? What can I learn, right? So I have an island here that's about a 20-minute paddle away, and I have a place up on top of the island where over many years I have put people, if they have the right reasons for wanting to go out, there's no money involved, which is, happened in Sedona, California. A guy made $18 million doing Temescals and Vision Quest. And then 2 people died because he had like 30 people in it and that kind of stuff, right? He's put in jail. We sued him. The Lakota sued. But anyway, going back to the positive is, this the kinds of stories that people will bring back. We'll be picking them up Thursday morning. We'll go out and get them, and there'll be a number of people in the lodge. And when he tells his story about the buzzard that sat next to him, lifting the wings up to dry so that the insects could die, and it was like 2 feet from him, and that's unusual. So that's probably one of the messengers for the image, for the vision seeking, and there's just so many. I mean, I'll tell you one quick story, and this is usually saved for the lodge, but I actually, talking with you, feel this is a sacred time. So, and we said the prayer, our Lakota prayer. So, I'll tell you this story. I went out on an ombleche when I was in Idaho, and not on Pine Ridge anymore. I lived on Pine Ridge when I was dean of education. I rode my horse to the college, and I did the NEPs all the time, every day. But I was in Idaho, and I had moved, and it was cold, and I wasn't acclimated to the 115-degree South Dakota summers. I was on my way for 4 days of dancing without water with Rick Two Dogs, and it was one of the most sacred of our, at least like Fool's Cove was, and one of our most respected medicine people. And so I told B, I said, I don't know if I can do this. And I had already fulfilled my 4 years. I said, I don't know if I can really go it without. I haven't been acclimated to that weather. It's going to be 115. It was like a month ahead diagnosis of the weather. She says, well, you better go up on the mountain. So I did my tobacco ties. I prayed. I went up on top, and set them in a circle with my chinupa. I went inside the circle, and right away I'm in this. It's a circle I put in that I had to cut every year because the forest was so great, but it overlooked a beautiful view of the Sawtooth Mountains, sitting facing to the west. But I'm not in that space yet. I'm still in my Western mindset. thinking about work and, or whatever. So I sit in, and this rat-like creature just kind of comes out. I was quiet enough for it to come out, I guess, and starts chewing on some tobacco that's leaking out of one of the ties. And what do? I kick it out. And I'm going, it was like, it wasn't a second after I did it, I went, oh man, that could have been the whole reason I'm up here. It could have been that creature. I mean, it was unusual enough that it came in at that time, but I was still not in that mindset. Here was a rat coming up by my foot.
Right.
So I sat there in disappointment, really thinking, wow, this is going to be a long time. And it came back. This is a true story. It came back. I gave my thanks. Thank you. And started eating some more tobacco. And then it sort of made a turn, stepping into the circle, facing to the west with its back to me, and these big haunches it had, a big long tail and legs, like a pet dog. And I'm sitting there looking at its back. And here, I mean, how could a wild animal behave this way? And then it kind of went over, had another little bite, and just boom, was disappeared into the woods. Mm-hmm. Well, now my thinking is, I don't belong to Idaho. I don't have any medicine people here that know the land. I don't know it. I don't have the wisdom that we used to have. Mm-hmm. The Colorado Murray people that I live with, they know 350 plants and what, it's just amazing, you know. So what am I thinking? And you'll laugh. You'll laugh at this, Sarah. I can't wait to get to Google. I mean, that was it, right? So here I am talking about the combination of,
Yes.
But by the way, I'm just going to throw this in because it came to me on May 27th. One of my former students, a genius in AI, and I'm not a fan of AI. I think it's going to be dangerous for humanity in the long run, but in the short run, I teach my students how to use it because it can. My daughter got somebody out with the ditch school. Her class got a man out of prison who was in for 20 years, and she said she couldn't have done it without AI because it would print off legal documents. Right? Mm-hmm. Well, on May 27th, we have the first 100% indigenous-based AI coming out to fight fire with fire. That said, go back to my story. And so I can't wait to get to the computer. And so anyway, make a long story short, I make my fire, get ready for the Wahinkpe ceremony. People will be coming over. And I run upstairs and get on the computer, and I put in mammals of North America. And then I put in pictures, photos, or whatever they should have on Google in those days. And I looked down these animals, and man, there it is. And it's obviously, this is what it was. It had the Latin name, which I don't remember. And then it said kangaroo rat.
Fascinating.
In Idaho and other places where it lived. And then it said, the only mammal in North America that can go a lifetime without a drop of water.
Wow.
Yeah, and your audience can go Google it right now. I did it the other day with one of my clients when I told the story, and it says something very similar in every place you go. That they get it from the grain or something. Mm-hmm.
Sure.
But that was, for me, that was a message that said, if he can go for a lifetime without water, I can do this again, right? This is the magic that happens in the Wahinkpe ceremony. Mm-hmm. It's the magic that happens in any ceremony, mm-hmm. whether it be, the vision quest, or whether it be the Wahinkpe. And, if you go in with the right heart, not as an experimentation or just an adventure. I mean, a lot of the hallucinogenic things that are going on, like ayahuasca, people are doing it too much. Even the shamans are selling out because of the money that they're getting. And now the plants are disappearing, right? So, once in a while, if, the hallucinogenic trip has value and is worthwhile if you have somebody that can prepare you for it in the right way and you know what to do afterwards. But the Wahinkpe ceremony really, is all I need now. And but you got to go in and with the right attitude and understand how to participate in it. So that But people, if they want to, Fool's Crow said, anyone that does not share this medicine does not know it. But Indian country is divided right down the middle. I'll just give you one little story to say that. I know a lot of your audience is saying, hey, I'm not indigenous. I can't do this. Bless their hearts, because misappropriation is rampant, of course, and playing Indian is a problem. However, Fool's Crow said it, it's the way I think it. Anyone who does not share this medicine doesn't know it. And so the story, the example, I was on the founding board of the STAR School, Service to All Relationships, a school that Mark Sorensen has put together on the edge of the Navajo Reservation. And we did a fundraiser. And I was playing music mostly to people from Flagstaff, white people. And at the end, I sang, and my wife played banjo, I played the keyboard, and I sang a thank you song. And I'm putting my keyboard away, and Bee's putting her banjo away, when one of the Navajo medicine people come up to me and scolds me. For you know better than to take that out of the circle, he said. And I patted him on the shoulder, and I said, my brother, we agree to disagree on that. And he walked away angry. Not 30 seconds later, another respected medicine person, I like to say more respected in my story, came up to me and he hugged me. And he said, thank you for taking that out of the circle.
Yeah.
But you got to respect both positions.
Right.
Right. But there's more anger and more fear in the first position. Mm-hmm. And we need allies, right? And so this is why I talk about, you can't decolonize. More and more universities, especially, in Africa, I've got a lot of African students at the university that's in Haiti, and getting their doctorate. And we talk about, the decolonizing movement, how they don't know that it requires indigenizing, because decolonizing means pre-colonizing. And if we don't know about what to replace what we're attacking, get rid of rightfully, then we're still lost, right? Yeah. So I am bringing that into education, or at least I did, and now I'm bringing it in one-on-one stuff on Zoom or in person. But good. Boy, your questions have been fantastic, Sarah.
For Eros, I have absolutely loved the conversation, the vastness of this conversation as well. Are there things that you would like to reiterate for our audience as they are wrapping their mind around this beautiful conversation about how we can choose actions that will cause us to move from fear to courage into fearlessness, and that by doing that the animal that we feed is the one that grows?
Absolutely. And the most important thing to remember is that we are spirits, and we are surrounded by spirits. And that is a starting point. And that nature is our teacher. Everything, even if you're in downtown New York and or the east side of St. Louis, go out and look for that weed that's growing out of the concrete. And what can you learn from that relates to your challenge? All right. And look at the birds. And if you see a star through the pollution, what does that mean to you?
Yeah.
And so that's the first thing. The second thing is that worldview, like I started to say, it's not the best term because of the history that I told you. I tried to come up with existence-scape and all the other things. It's not something we see. It's about how we belong to the world. Since Robert Redfield's work, now more and more scholars are seeing worldview. So if you join our worldview project and go to worldviewliteracy.org, you can download it in Spanish or German or English. At this point in time, we have Icelandic is coming out, but just put it on your wall, and every day with your family, just say, where am I right now? What am I? One of these things is not maybe what I believe, but are being manifested in my work around me, or I'm playing into it. And say, okay, I might, when I come home tonight, I'll do a little self-hypnosis. It takes 5 minutes, and I'm going to change that. And then it's actionable, because everything's got to be about action, not theory. Yeah. And so the worldview chart, and then go back in 3 months to our survey and fill out the survey and tell us how you used it, how often, and what the effect was, right? We're getting results now that are life changing. So I think the worldview is foundational And it's what's being the worldview that has us in trouble, in spite of some of its wonderful magic. It's really got it's constantly we're constantly rehypnotizing ourselves that way, and we're going in the wrong direction into fascism and all that kind of stuff that relates the ultimate of that kind of a worldview. So the worldview is the key. And if I can, I close with a little of a sort of a prayer.
I would love that, because you mentioned that we had done the Lakota prayer, but we did that before we hit the record. But I would love for you to wrap up our time together with the Lakota
We'll
prayer.
kind of wrap it up. I don't know if I have to play. Can you hear this or not? Because sometimes on mine I have to hit a button for music. Can you hear this? Were you able to hear that?
Yes, and I am going to take myself out so it's just you on the screen as you do this. Thank you.
All right, this will be like a movie. Then people can just leave as the movie's playing. And so this is a song that will help us in these times. It was a Cherokee lullaby that was played on the Trail of Tears. You all can look up the Trail of Tears to know what that was all about. But the women every night would sing to the children, "Did you see the beautiful clouds in the sky with the animals? And how the clouds are keeping their responsibility and giving us rain to drink on this forced march. Did you see the beautiful fish and the colors it had in the creek, and how it's keeping its responsibility to keep the creek cool, and how it's teaching us our colors for our artwork and our paintings? Did you hear the beautiful mockingbird song and how it's teaching our song, how it's keeping its responsibility?" So the whole song is about these different beauties that they would still be seeing on this terrible ordeal, that they would still see and remember. And so I want you to be thinking about that as times are difficult. And I'll just play it, and then you can just leave.
Oh, thank you so much, Four Arrows, for joining us, for finishing with this song of such deep beauty, reminding us that there is beauty around us no matter where we are, and to be focusing on that, and to know that as we focus on that, that's growing within us, and that then impacts everything that we touch. I so appreciate this time with you, friend. And to our incredible audience, we are just so deeply grateful that you are on this journey with us. And every time that we get together, we long to give you tools that will be helpful for you in all the things that you are doing, whether it's things that you are doing in your spiritual walk, things that you are doing in your business walk, things that you are doing in your life walk, wherever that happens to be. So grateful for you. Thank you for joining us and for staying to the very end. I appreciate you. Until next time, take good care of you.